Our next topic, as we're discussing motivation, is hunger. So, what motivates us to eat? And what we're going to learn is that research shows that we should really take a multiple systems approach to looking at hunger motivation because there are both physiological and psychological factors that motivate our hunger or, regulate our eating behavior. We automatically regulate our caloric intake in order to prevent any kind of deficit in energy, right? We've got to eat in order to have energy. That's what calories provide us. They provide us with energy. Um, so, one way that our body keeps tabs on its resources is through blood sugar called glucose. Increases in insulin decrease blood glucose by converting it into stored fat. So if your blood glucose drops, you're not going to consciously feel your low blood sugar more than likely unless you really have, a severely low blood sugar. But what that drop does is that it sends a signal to your brain, which is automatically monitoring your blood chemistry via your hypothalamus, that it needs to trigger hunger. And so it's going to trigger you to eat. So that's one way that our body chemistry plays a role in influencing our eating behavior. The hypothalamus is really the important part of the brain to understand when we're talking about regulating hunger because it's the responsibility of the hypothalamus to monitor sugar and fat levels in the blood. And in response to that monitoring is going to either secrete hormones that stimulate our appetite or suppress our appetite. There's a part of the hypothalamus called the arcuate nucleus. And there is one center, I apologize for the typo there, one center that secretes appetite stimulating hormones. And there's another center that secretes appetite suppressing hormones. The part of the hypothalamus that is responsible for stimulating hunger is called the lateral hypothalamus, whereas the part of the hypothalamus that signals to us that we're full or satiated is called the ventromedial hypothalamus. A mnemonic device that I like to use for remembering this is I've eaten very much and I'm full. Ventromedial, I've eaten very much and I'm full. So let's talk a little bit more about these hunger hormones. Like we were saying, insulin is a hormone that's secreted by the pancreas, and this controls blood glucose levels. Leptin is secreted by fat cells, and when there's lots of leptin, when it's abundant, the brain's going to increase metabolism and decrease our hunger. Orexin is a hunger triggering hormone that's secreted by the hypothalamus, as is ghrelin. Now, I like to remember ghrelin by saying that my stomach growls like ghrelin. Ghrelin is secreted by an empty stomach. So the hypothalamus is connected to the bloodstream via blood vessels, and when an empty stomach secretes ghrelin, it's going to trigger the hypothalamus to send hunger cues that will stimulate our hunger and cause us to eat. Another hormone that's secreted by the digestive tract, this sends a hunger suppressing signal to the brain that we're not hungry, is called PYY. So there are some differing opinions among researchers regarding what is referred to as our set point. And this is talked about more in the TED Talk that you watched. But the idea of the set point is that we have this internal biological scale, kind of like a thermostat in our house, where if our body is low on resources, it is going to be triggered to eat and to regain those resources, right? And to return to what is called our set point, or like our normal kind of predisposed weight. So for many people that are dieting, according to research, they might really restrict their food intake. What does the body do? The body is like, I'm starving. It's now in starvation mode. So it's going to cause that individual to now binge in order to make up for the lost calories and the restriction that they just put themselves through. So this is where we get kind of like the diet and binging cycle, is the body's natural inclination to want to maintain this set point, or this, certain level of body fat and body weight. Now, there are some researchers who disagree that the set point is as fixed as it is. They believe that, slow and sustained changes in our body weight can alter our set point, and so they don't refer to it as a set point, but more as a settling point. They believe that it's less fixed. There are also pressure detectors in our stomach that signal fullness or emptiness. That was what I was talking about a second ago when I mentioned ghrelin. When our stomach's empty, in addition to the pressure detectors, the stomach is also secreting ghrelin. Our stomach is growling, it's secreting ghrelin, and that's going to trigger eating behavior. So, some other influences on our eating behavior are definitely foods that we're biologically predisposed to prefer. The types of foods that we're predisposed to prefer are salty, sweet, fatty foods that are very high in calories, because for our ancestors, in order to survive periods of famine, they would need to load up on foods that were very high in caloric content. So we do have a natural, biologically predisposed preference for those types of foods. We also learned back in our learning unit that we very easily learn taste aversion. So if we eat something and then we become sick, we'll develop an aversion for the food that we ate before the illness. This is also a biological predisposition, if you remember. Other factors that influence our hunger and our eating behavior are situations that we're in. So if we are used to eating at a particular time, maybe like at quote lunchtime, we might feel more hungry at that particular time, or when we sit down to watch TV, if we make a habit to eat during that time, that might be something that we're just naturally inclined to do. The amount of selection that we have can influence how much we eat. The presence of friends. Research shows that when we are around friends, when we're in social situations, we have a tendency to eat more than when we're by ourselves. Culture can absolutely influence eating behavior and also taste preferences, as well as our states of arousal. There's an experiment that showed that when watching an intense action movie, rather than a non-arousing interview, participants actually doubled their snacking behavior. The effects of portion size, and that offering someone larger portions will lead them to eat those larger portions, as opposed to if you just give them smaller portions, or use like a smaller plate as opposed to a larger plate. So when we talk about this multi-systems approach to understanding hunger, we're saying that it's kind of an interaction of physiological and psychological factors that work together in influencing our eating behavior.